Hello and welcome to the Wing42 Developers Update on YouTube. I want to show you our first product, the Lockheed Vega, in action, so that you can get a very in-depth look and feel of how the aircraft flies and how it operates. What you see me doing in the background right now is just to set the loadout for our short little flight. So I took some passengers on, topped up the fuel and put some baggages in the back. And the ground crew will perform all these actions in the meantime, and you can see how the bags are loaded into the back of the plane. The fuel is still being loaded, and it works just like in real life, where first one tank is filled and then the other tank is filled. Before the ground crew can actually board the plane, certain things need to be in place. For instance, before a passenger can come and board, the ground crew will open the door, will install stairs, will make sure that the wheel chocks are installed as well. And only then will the first passenger arrive. So we're nearly finished now. So it's about time to do the startup. Remove the wheel chocks here. Make sure that the parking brake is set. And that's the master battery switch there on the right side. And you can see how the two fuel and oil pressure lights go on. Just a quick check that the fuses are all right. There's no blown fuse there that we need to worry about. This is a check for the fuel gauges, just to see that the tanks are properly filled and the gauges work as they should. Fuel valve is open, mixture full, couple of inches of throttle. And now we bring up the fuel pressure. It's a manual pump, so you have to really work that. And you can see how the fuel pressure rises. That's the right bottom instrument, and also the fuel warning light has gone off. We prime the engine, just a couple of strokes to inject some fuel into the cylinders. Magnetos both, booster coil and starter. And the engine comes to life. You want to keep the RPM a little bit low. We want to keep the RPM roughly around the 800 to 1000 RPM mark, as to not to overstress the engine during startup. Just set the altimeter there, and that's as a vacuum selector. I set the selector to Venturi. There's a Venturi tube on the right side of the aircraft, and you can see how the vacuum-powered instruments come to life. The directional gyro on the left, artificial horizon, and the turn and bank indicator should... There it goes, there comes the turn and bank indicator. So we just set the course. We have about 12 degrees deviation, so that needs to be taken into consideration here. I think it's all set. You can see the light splashes on the outside from the positioning lights of the Vega. They do a check that the controls are free and operable. Off we go, taxiing to the active. One thing that you should pay attention to is the movement of the compass. Took a great deal of time to get the compass moving in the way that it does. So I programmed a system based on differential equations for motion, as well as a spring damping system that are in place for many parts of the aircraft, and that gives you a very realistic movement of instrument needles, the compass in particular, and things like the handles in the back that we'll see in a later stage in this video. I just set the parking brake again to do a quick run up. So you increase the throttle to, I don't know, something like 1500 RPM. Check that both magnetos are working. No problem there. Landing lights on. It is a very fast plane. That is something that you can see straight away. For the time, the Lockheed Vega performed to an amazing extent, and that was mainly due to the streamlined design of it. The modern processes that they used to manufacture the fuselage of the plane made it very streamlined as well. Because it was a monocoque construction, they saved a lot on the framework that would be needed otherwise. Therefore, it was quite a light plane if you compare it to similar planes of the era. That furthered the performance of the aircraft. And what you see is the version 5C of the Lockheed Vega with a little bit of a bigger vertical stabilizer and rudder, as well as very prominent the NACA cowling that was developed. That's a predecessor of NASA that did research into aviation and streamlined processes and all these things. And they found out that putting a cowling around the engine improves the performance dramatically, and that's the time, the 1920s, when you see these type of cowlings arising. The first Vegas actually didn't have those. You can see if you see pictures of the Vega 1 or 2, and even the Vega 5 before the B and C conversion, you can see the engine just hanging there in the air, creating all this drag. The cowling was later fitted onto the aircraft. Here we have a view of the cabin, and I want to show you another cool little feature, which is the handles that move by the means that I've described to you before. It adds this little bit of immersion into the plane, this little bit of extra that brings this whole aircraft to life. I really like the way it looks. And check out the compass as well. During like these abrupt maneuvers, you can see how the compass tips, how it bounces back, how it realigns itself. It can actually get stuck as well if you have very extreme, an extreme bank angle, for instance, and you slip. You will see how the compass gets stuck, and it won't directly indicate your magnetic heading straight away. And you can also see like the level of vibration, and different instruments behave in a different way. Like the RPM gauge has a very volatile needle and it's always flickering a little bit, while other instrument needles are much more stable due to the nature of their design. The Lockheed Vega is the first product that I published in for Flight Simulator and prepared. It's still in development. It will be available soon for as an early alpha release. So what you can expect is a lot of unfinished features, some bugs that are still there that are bugging me. But you'll get the Lockheed Vega at a discounted price, and you can be part of the development process if you choose to do so. By participating in the discussions in our forums, you can make your suggestions that I'm happy to include. For the early alpha release, you can expect an aircraft that flies very well, very close to the original. You can expect some of the features will be working perfectly. I finished with the instrumentation of the barometric instruments, for instance. The vacuum system is done. Electrical system is done. However, there's still a lot of things that will be addressed in future updates. For instance, the whole engine simulation is not up to speed yet. What I'm implementing is, for instance, a very comprehensive fuel system. I'm actually calculating the fuel pressure at different parts of the engine. As a tester of the version, as a participant of the early alpha, you will get access to our debug panel, in which you can actually see how the oil is pumped through various parts of the engine and how it affects the different properties of it, like viscosity and temperature, pressure, and so on. However, the system is still not finished, and the major part of it is that I haven't finished a heat exchange module. So at the moment, the engine oil keeps at a steady level at 15 degrees or whatever the outside temperature is. And as a result of that, it won't change its properties of viscosity just yet. So the next step in that part of the simulation is to program a system in which heat can be exchanged between various components of the engine, so that the engine heats up during combustion, and it's then exchanging that energy to the oil, to the surrounding air. And that part is something that I'm working on right now. And there's other things that are not quite up to speed yet. For instance, the whole fuel system is not done yet, and that includes things like the carburetor. The mixture is still default FSX or prepared, whatever version of the flight simulator you use, as well as the supercharger. So I decided to have a representation of the Lockheed Vega with a 2-speed supercharged engine. And while the lever is already there in the cockpit, it doesn't have any effect on the engine's performance just yet. So all of these things are still to come in a future update. Malfunctions will be included also only in a future update, I'm afraid. That is something that I'm very keen on putting in there. What is done already is the core functionality of a maintenance tool, and that you have access to. You can see how various parts can get affected and which parts can get affected by various faults, malfunctions, maltreatment as well, and wear and tear. However, at the moment, none of these events are triggered yet. So that means that yes, you can have your mechanic check the engine, but he won't find anything. With two exceptions. One is the electrical system. So it can happen that if you have a very poor battery, if your battery is worn, it can happen that that as a result of that, for instance, your fuses blow, or it can happen that that you get an overcurrent in one of the systems and they fail as a result of that. It's not very common, but yeah, just so that you're aware. And the other thing is the barometric system. So at the moment, what will happen is that the static port as well as the pitot tube can get clogged up over time. And that's especially the case if you park your aircraft and you come back, say, 2 weeks later, and you haven't covered the pitot tube and static port when you left the aircraft on the ground. And so that's an error that you might encounter in the early alpha. And later on, like I said, one of the major goals that I have is to include a comprehensive system of malfunctions that are that can occur. I made provisions for even instruments to fail, not just the underlying system, but you can see, for instance, that your oil pressure is not rising during your startup. That can have multiple reasons. One reason might be there's no oil in your system, might just be that your instrument is faulty. On top of that, when you check your components, your mechanic might not even find what's wrong with the component. Or he might find the problem, attempts to fix it, but fails, and your component is still broken. So all these things are, the core functions are there. It's just that you won't see it in action just yet with the early alpha version. And yeah, so I want to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I gave you some insight as to what you're in for if you choose to become a customer of Wing42 and the Lockheed Vega. And I hope I see you soon.